Do the Oklahoma Sooners have the toughest schedule in college football?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Bill Connelly of ESPN released his SP Plus ratings for the 2025 season, factoring in returning production, recruiting in recent years, and recent history of success or lack of success. And the Oklahoma Sooners come in at number 20, Jay.
Yeah, he thinks that Oklahoma's a top 20 team in the country, even with losses, transfers, and all of that. Still pretty solid after, having a 6-7 season for the second time in 3 years. But I'm a little surprised at where the defense is ranked. It's only ranked 14th on his SP Plus right now, which, end of last season, it finished the season at what? Top, was it top? Was it things about top 10? Last year, so it's a good balance when you lose that much production. Being the production number for Oklahoma was what at about it's ranked 46th in the country at 60% coming back. So that's not actually too bad for you. Only dropped about 4 spots. So pretty excited to see where the team ends up once the first game of the season hits.
Yeah, the Oklahoma Sooners, I think, are getting buoyed a little bit by the amount of returning production that they have coming back. I mean, they're, again, 10th in the nation in returning production, according to Bill Connelly and ESPN. So I think that's helping them. Their recruiting success is helping them. Again, 3 top 10 finishes in the 2022, 2023, and 2024 recruiting cycles. Sure, you have a number 17 finish in 2025, but you have a lot of positive factors influencing at least being at number 20. Oklahoma's defense finished the regular season number 19 in SP Plus. That offense number 74. A bunch of stinkoness for Oklahoma's offense, but looking a little bit better, at least in the preseason for SP Plus. You mentioned it. Their defense right now sitting at 14. The offense at 43. Not great, but at least better than where they were. And we expect it to be better. What's interesting about this, Jay, with the schedule aspect, you have 8 teams in front of the Oklahoma Sooners in SP Plus ratings.
Oof.
That includes number 2, Alabama, number 7, Texas, number 8, Tennessee, number 9, Ole Miss, number 10, LSU, number 13, Michigan, number 15, Missouri, number 16, South Carolina.
Yeah, it's goodness, that's 8. Yeah, eight teams that we're gonna have to play this year. So, John, I guess the question is will Oklahoma end up having the toughest schedule in college football this year?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll look like the toughest schedule when it comes to the end of the season, because we've highlighted all the turnover that's happening across the SEC, and a lot of it's happening on Oklahoma's schedule. Yes, it looks tough now because a lot of those teams finished the 2024 season pretty well. You look at Texas, obviously they were a playoff team. Tennessee was a playoff team. Ole Miss was a fringe playoff team. Alabama was a fringe playoff team. They were right there on the cusp. South Carolina right outside the playoffs. Michigan, they finished the season stronger than what they started. Who else am I missing here? LSU. LSU is going to be a team that's going to be a contender. So, it looked really, really strong at the end of the season because it was a really tough schedule. But Ole Miss lost Jackson Dart and Princely Unmanmielian and Trey Harris and Walter Nolan. Tennessee lost a bunch of dudes to the transfer portal. Dylan Sampson to the NFL draft. You've got turnover everywhere. Texas lost a bunch of guys as well. So it's not going to be the same teams that finished the 2024 season either in the playoffs or right outside the playoffs. So I don't know, man. It looks tough now. It looks tough on paper, but I'm just not sure that when we get to December of 2025 that we're going to look at Oklahoma's schedule and be like, yeah, man, that was the toughest schedule in college football.
Right. And that question really comes in from how much production all these other teams are coming back with, right? So when you look at the teams that Oklahoma plays, nobody that they play against is returning more production than what Oklahoma's returning. Everybody is below them at the overall number. And on defense, I think that there's what, 4 teams that they play is going to be above them. Right. So, yeah, everybody that Oklahoma plays coming up do not return as much production. And was it Ole Miss, Georgia, and Texas are the ones that are sitting at the bottom of the list in the 103, 105, 113 range. So they got a lot of new players they have to prove. But the reasoning, like you said, around SP Plus, why they are so high is because they're bringing they've done a really good job of recruiting. Like all these teams have done a really good job of recruiting. And so just Oklahoma being at number 20 is a testament of the roster that they've built. Now they got to go out there and execute so that they can continue to move up the charts. That's really the most important thing, is those players have to show on the field that they are worth the rankings of being moved up. And I think that this year Oklahoma has a really good chance.
Yeah, just got to go win games. And that's really what it comes down to. If you want to retain your head coach, he's got to go win games. If you want to make sure people don't forget about Oklahoma and the legacy that has been created over 100 years of college football, you got to go win games.
Yep.
The best way to make sure that people don't view you as the next Nebraska is to not go be the next Nebraska and go win football games. And
fair point.
We'll see if they can do it, man. I think both you and I are kind of optimistic about it, but we're also both in the camp that we want to go see them prove it. We want to go see them beat Michigan. We want to see them beat Auburn in Texas and start the season off on a high note going into that back half of the season where you're going to be playing against a ton of really, really good teams. You can't afford any slip-ups in the first half of it. You can't afford to lose to a team like Auburn. Although, yes, they have some talent on that team, you can't drop that game if you want to be a college football playoff team. If you want to be a college football playoff team, you can't lose to Michigan, in my opinion, because you don't have any room or margin for error in the second half of your season if you don't start the season 5-0.
So when you look at the numbers here, John, who stood out to you the most as far as in the SEC with their rankings? Because to be honest, Vanderbilt's a lot lower than I thought they were going to give them after the season they had last year. But at the same time, I mean, 54 is probably about a 6-6 record. So it kind of makes sense. But I think Vanderbilt shocked me. And, they're probably the ones that jumped out to me the most. What about you?
Yeah, I think South Carolina maybe. I want to see them do it another year before I'm really ready to make them a, top 20 or top 15 team, top 16 team in the nation. Remember, this time last year, Shane Beamer was on the hot seat. A lot of people were trying to fire Shane Beamer after some really underwhelming seasons there for the Gamecocks. And then they went and had a really good year. He had them in the playoff conversation at the end of the season. A lot of people believe they were one of the snubs from the college football playoff, and I don't think so. I mean, you could argue maybe some officiating kept them out. Yeah. At the same time, you lost those games. So that's a team that I still want to see them prove it another year before I'm ready to say, hey, they've reached the pinnacle. They're one of those teams that everybody's going to have to overcome. But that's kind of where I stand. Georgia does not surprise me. Alabama doesn't surprise me. Texas doesn't surprise me. Maybe Missouri, you might be able to talk about. Florida
got my attention too. Looking at this, 23rd in offense, 22nd in defense, 8th in special teams, coming in and rank at 17. We're that sold on Florida. We're doing this with Florida now, right? That's what we're doing? We're doing this with Florida?
I mean, I guess you got to take into account what they've got coming back, because I think they're pretty high up in returning production, and then you've got to take into account the recruiting. Otherwise, the success is not there. They don't have any recent history of success under Billy Napier to believe that they're one of the top 17 teams in the country.
Yeah, returning production-wise, 18th overall, 36th in offense, 25th in defense. So, yeah, that is a very good point to point out. Last year, though, which is kind of surprising. They were 24th overall, but they returned more offense at 27 and a little less defense going at the end of the spring of last year. So, oh no. Question is, can they go out there and produce as well? Their schedule is going to be tough, though. What kills Florida is that non-con, man. You playing those in-state teams, and both in-state teams. Well, one of them was atrocious last year, and the other one was really good.
Yeah.
I don't expect Florida State to stay down. They no longer have the quarterback that was actually holding them back. They should be able to be a lot better than they were last year.
Yeah, it's going to be a competition, I think, between Florida and Oklahoma as to who has the toughest schedule in 2025. And whichever team is able to navigate that a little bit better might be able to hold on to their coach for one more year. Might not.
Maybe.
Could be some coaching turnover that occurs either in Gainesville or Norman, depending on how the 2025 season goes.
Good point.
But what's the future for the SEC look like? A lot of talk about a 9-game schedule. What do we think it should look like? We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Today's episode is brought to you by Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. As a parent, I want to make sure my family is financially protected no matter what happens. Fabric gives me that peace of mind. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan for your children's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Price subject to underwriting and health questions. Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. College football is probably moving to a 14 or 16 game college football playoff format. And much of the discussion and really the negotiations that are taking place are to get the SEC to match what the Big 12, the ACC, and the Big 10 are doing. And that's playing 9 conference games. Jay, first of all, do you favor an 8-game conference schedule or a 9-game conference schedule?
I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of more in favor of an 8-game instead of a 9 because I kind of prefer the multiple big time games in the non-con. I know that Big 12 and the Big 10 and all of them still do non-con games that are pretty big, but with the SEC, they've got a lot of teams that have built-in rivalries that are power for schools. Like we just talked about a minute ago, Florida has Florida State and Miami every single year. Georgia has Georgia Tech every single year. South Carolina has Clemson every single year. So the rivalry games there kind of help with some of the non-con. Now, not everybody deals with that, but I'm here for the 8-game and just keep it that way. And then continue to, if anything, I would require each team to have 2 P4 non-con games to go with, whatever, is left over. And then you can have 2, cupcakes just for the fans to be able to see what your team looks like. And I don't have a problem with cupcakes. You need them. College football doesn't have a preseason, and so you kind of need tune-up games in order to get going. The NFL has preseason games so they can get themselves and get their bodies ready, but I think college football still needs to have some sort of a tune-up set of games. So I'm here for, still having some non-con games that aren't that big of a deal. Where are you at with the 8 or 9 game conference schedule?
I kind of lean more to the 9, but you make a good point in if you require everybody to have 2 Power 4 games on the schedule, as opposed to right now where it's just 1 Power 4 game on the schedule, I think that makes it more intriguing, to be honest, because then you can have a Nebraska on your schedule more regularly, or you can get Oklahoma State back on your schedule more regularly.
Yeah.
And play a Michigan. But if you were to play Nebraska and Oklahoma State on a regular basis, would you want to go play a Michigan or an Ohio State or a USC, fingers crossed one day, or pick a Big 12 school. I think that does create a more intriguing element. At the same time, the 9-game, dude, that would also be very, very fun. It'd be very fascinating because like how much fun, like, okay, we sucked. We were terrible. We lost 6 SEC games this year. It was not fun. But from an entertainment standpoint, it was kind of fun.
Yeah, there was still entertainment value there. Well, I think for us as Sooner fans, just the different matchups at different stadiums, because it's the best part about playing in the SEC and the Big Ten is the massive stadiums you get to go travel to. There's a lot more, and most of the bigger ones are between those two conferences, so it's a lot more fun in that capacity. So totally get you on that one. I think the thing that gets me is, so here's the question. I shot this, me and you had talked about this a little bit, last night when the SEC Mike and that SEC podcast were putting out their permanent SEC opponents if they go to a 9-gamer. Was really thinking about it, and man, I'm gonna be honest, if the goal is to get 4 automatic bids, why not go to the quad system? 4 divisions, 4 teams each. The winner of those, of each quad, is the one that's most likely, like you have to play your entire quad and then like one from each other, 1 or 2, or depending on how you want to set it up, but make it to where that the winner of the quad ends up in like the playoff setup to go into the SEC championship game, and then boom, those top 4 teams still make it into the playoffs. That to me feels like it makes more sense. That's how you can figure out your seeding, where you have to play your games. I like the quad. I don't like the 3 permanents because it takes away certain things. Like, for example, this year, Alabama didn't play Mississippi State for the first time in like 105 or 10 years. It was the longest running matchup in college football that got eliminated because of realignment. And a lot of people were like, oh, it's Mississippi State. They shouldn't have played them. Well, there's kind of a rivalry there. It's not like it's a real one. It's like Oklahoma State. But they played each other every year for over 105 years, and I hate that we lost that because of realignment. I want to be able to preserve some of that kind of stuff too.
Yes, and you look at Oklahoma and what they've got in front of them at in the SP Plus ratings that we just talked about, and if you're talking 8-game schedule, well, 7 of those teams that Oklahoma's going to play this year are on their schedule that are ahead of them. So if we're talking strength of schedule, it's looking pretty all right. You look at the Big Ten, they've got a team ranked in the hundreds in Purdue. The ACC and the Big 12, they've got teams ranked 76 or lower. The SEC doesn't have that in SP Plus ratings. And so I get the strength of schedule argument. I get the schedule equity argument where you want to have everybody kind of playing on the same playing field. At the same time, I mean, the SEC, even though they haven't been to the national title game in the last couple of years, even though they're playing 8, or at least with Oklahoma playing 8 conference games, they're playing as tough a schedule as anybody in the country.
Yeah, they've got 2.
And so I'm okay with that. Like, if that's going to be your 8 games, and then you have Michigan on top of it, I'm okay with that. But
100% agree.
And then as far as the quad argument goes, Jay, I don't want to see a Seattle Seahawks 7-9 team make the playoff. And if you're telling me that the winner of each quad is going to get a potential playoff spot over a team that maybe has a better record, I don't know how I feel about that one. That's and this is where the automatic bid situation loses me a little bit. If you're going to tell me that you're guaranteeing 4 Big Ten, 4 SEC schools, what happens in a year where you've got like a bunch of 8-4 teams and none of them really deserve to be in?
Yeah, that's where things get really sticky here. And that's where the money comes in, because we've got to make sure that the suits are taken care of. They need a little bit more in their pocket to pay, those yacht bills or whatnot. So no, I totally agree with you there. That is the toughest part about the quad setup, is there's that potential for a team with we'll say probably 9-3 more so is most likely with college football, but it's still not going to be, you may get an 8-4, hey, you might see a 7-5. That could be it. But it'll be, to me, it's maybe not the winner of each quad gets it. Maybe you may make it to where not even the highest seeded one can even get into the playoffs. It's going to be based. I guess for me, what I'm looking at is how do you set it up to where you can just make a mini playoffs that leads into the SEC championship game that then leads into the actual playoffs, which honestly, what you could do is just do a mini playoffs for each conference that leads into their conference champion, and then just the conference champions are the only ones that's left in the playoffs. That may be more optimal. Like instead of seeing the same SEC teams over and over, you just see them early and then work your way down the line.
Yeah, that's something I thought about a little bit too. At the same time, if you do that, how do you include Notre Dame if they're worthy of being in the playoff? How do you potentially include a group of 5 team? It kind of busts your bracket up a little bit.
Do 6. Just do it down to 6. And then, Notre Dame plays as one of them if they have a good enough record. Or you make them play in the ACC's playoffs based upon their record.
They're not going to the ACC.
Well, no, they don't have to play in the ACC, but they got to play in the ACC's tournament.
Yeah. No. They're a Big Ten team.
Well, they play ACC basketball.
That's stupid. They need to be a Big Ten team.
I mean, it's fair point. Fair point. They're in Big Ten country, but at the same time, we've got Stanford, Cal playing in the ACC.
Also stupid. So
they
need to go to back to the
and
Pac-12.
SMU. Yeah. Actually, all of it's stupid.
And
so
SMU
I agree.
needs to go to the Big 12. Yeah, that's dumb too. Yes, SMU makes a little bit more sense because you're not half a world away. Like you're not 3 time zones away. If you're Stanford and Cal, you're just 1 time zone away from the ACC, going from Eastern to Central. That makes a little bit more sense, similar to Oklahoma and Texas being in the SEC. At the same time, SMU's got to fly over a lot of SEC teams to get to an ACC school on the coast, or they got to fly west. It's odd, man. The current conference alignment setup is weird. But anyway, we didn't even really touch on this, and maybe we need to do this just real quick, or we need to save it for another day. SEC Mike recommended Arkansas and Missouri, in addition to Texas, as Oklahoma's 3 permanent opponents. How do you feel about that?
I don't like it at all. Because also in their recommendation, Arkansas is not even playing Texas A&M, and they have a rivalry game where they play in Dallas every year. Like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we getting rid of the standard traditions here? So, to me, if you do that, you probably, based upon the way they have it, let me pull that up really quickly, which that will be another fun conversation, as you mentioned. I totally agree there, that you got to find a way to get Texas A&M to play against Arkansas. If you do Texas A&M, Arkansas, that means Louisiana needs to be pulled out. You could probably throw Oklahoma and LSU together. I like that. You probably should shift Alabama to where they get, Mississippi State, which to me makes the most sense. So I'd probably take LSU off Alabama, send them to Mississippi State. So in that case, Oklahoma may pick up like Kentucky.
Gross.
Ole Miss.
Gross.
I know, right? Disgusting, right? He's just ill. LSU's going to probably pick up somebody else. Maybe give LSU... Actually, you know what? You probably should just give LSU Ole Miss. Well, they got Ole Miss on that list. Give them Kentucky. Shoot. Just let me get some of the regional stuff back. Give me some of the rivalries we're supposed to have. And your best way of doing it. I don't like Oklahoma getting Missouri and Arkansas just because of proximity. I understand they want to make it regionalized in that capacity, but let's keep at least some of the rivalries going. So there's a lot of shuffling needs to be done here, but yeah, I don't like Arkansas or Missouri. I think Arkansas I would prefer Arkansas because it's next door, but it's probably going to have to be removed.
Well, and to me, LSU makes a lot more sense for Arkansas than OU does.
Yeah.
So like for Arkansas, it probably needs to be LSU, Texas A&M. For OU, you're looking at, Missouri. That makes a little bit of sense. You've got 90 plus games together. Texas is the obvious one. And then dude, just give me somebody that's like a power, or it's been a power at one point in time in their college football life span. Florida. Give me Alabama. That's not going to happen, but you can make it Alabama. Make it, not Texas A&M is not a power, but they're a former Big 12 team that you played against a bunch. Yeah, something like that. Just don't, or Vanderbilt. Just give me the easy dub with Vanderbilt. That's fine too. All right, we got to talk some NFL Combine stuff because a couple Sooners just blew it up, made themselves a little bit of money. We'll discuss coming up next year on Locked On Sooners.
March basketball is here, and there's no better way to get into action with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. If you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. That's right. It's fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. Like, for example, we just talked about it. You can build your roster with, like I said, 2 or more players, and it's quick and easy. You can pick them in less than 60 seconds. And we just talked about the Combine. They've got the Combine in here if you want to make some picks. So if you want to look at Jalen Milroe's 40-yard dash at 4.41, you can pick more or less on that. Same thing with Cameron Scattaboo. 4.55 is the expectation. You pick more or less there. I'll check it out. You should too. So download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege. $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game.
And again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Danny Stutsman and Ethan Downs had a great day at the NFL Scouting Combine on Thursday. Danny Stutsman ran a 4.52 40-yard dash. Ethan Downs ran a 4.69 40-yard dash. Both of them performed well in the athletic drills as well. Just a good day for those 2 Sooner defenders.
Yeah, did you think that he was going to be that fast?
Which one?
Either.
I don't think so, actually. No, I thought coming into the combine, the athletic testing was going to be what everybody had questions about with Danny Stutsman. The production is there. The head for the game is there. The leadership is there. All the intangibles for Danny Stutsman are there. It was going to be, how well does he test? And I think with the way that he performed at the combine, although he did slip in the wave drill, the way he performed, I think could get some teams ready to draft him in the second round. I think before that, he was looking like more of a 3rd round, 4th round guy, at least according to some of the people that I talked to as well. For Ethan Downs, to me, he's draftable. Like, he's 100% draftable. I've been saying it for months that he's just one of those guys that defensive coordinators are going to love to have. He might start off as a rotational defensive end, but he's a guy that you can throw out there against the run, and you know that he's going to hold up against the run.
Yep. And Danny even mentioned it during one of the interviews. He said they saw like 100 more run plays in the SEC this year than they saw the year before in the Big 12, which makes sense because that's what the SEC is. It's all about the physicality of it and running through each other's face. And Oklahoma got to see all of that in the SEC, in which, I mean, we did it to a team as well. We just ran it down their throat as well. That's what kind of happens. But
rolled Bama.
It's crazy that, he pointed that out because that really shows the strength of who he is. Because that's been the way the NFL has been shifting. I know that running backs are really discounted and they don't get much respect or even get paid, but the physicality of it has been important. People have been running the ball. I mean, look at Philadelphia. You got Saquon Barkley running for over 2,000 yards after the season's over. It's because the league has shown that running. I mean, the Ravens, every year, the run game has been critical. It's just all about the little things in the playoffs. And so Danny's one of those guys that are built to be able to stop the run, but also running a 4.52, it's going to help with it being able to handle the flats, probably do the middle, all of that. I didn't expect Danny to get me a 4.52 like that. I thought he was going to be closer to a 4.6 like Ethan Downs, in which, Ethan Downs getting you a 4.69 is, I didn't think it's going to be that fast. I was thinking 4.75, but man, 4.69 is going to get that. Like you said, it's going to make them draftable. And that's what Oklahoma needs. Oklahoma needs some of these guys to jump up that were underrated and get themselves drafted to really continue to build on, yes, we are still sending dudes to the league. No, that's not going to stop. It's going to continue. And I think that this display at the Combine is a good example of just that right there.
Yeah, it matters because right now you're seeing a lot of pub about Ohio State and about Georgia and about Texas and all these teams at the top end of the college football echelon, they're getting a lot of pub right now. So you need the guys that did get invited to the combine. You need them to go perform well, and you need them to get drafted. And I think they both got a shot. I mean, again, Danny Stutsman was obviously going to get drafted. Ethan Downs was a bit of a question mark, simply just because of the production. You know, he had good, I think he had solid production, especially for what they asked him to do. But it's not so much that it was going to push him into a top 100 pick. That he tested well athletically, and he's going to test well with the strength stuff. He'll test well at his pro day. All that's going to help him. And again, you talk about intangibles with Danny Stutsman, you're going to get the same thing with Ethan Downs, a really, really smart football player, a dude that works really, really hard. He's tough at the point of attack. He's going to set the edge, and he's going to set it well. He's not going to get bullied out there. And he plays with an edge. Like, he plays with a fire. And again, defensive coordinators are going to love that dude. And by running a 4.69, he shows he can play on special teams. Like, he can be a punt, he can be on the punt coverage team. He can be on the kickoff coverage team, although kickoff coverage has changed a little bit. He can show he can play on those teams because he's got that speed. And you got to be able to do that if you're going to be a rotational defensive end at times. And so I like what they did. Next up is going to be Billy Bowman. We're going to see what he does. I believe on
later today.
Yeah,
it's all Friday. It's all today. Yeah.
So I'm expecting him to test really, really well as well. My best comp for him is Antoine Winfield, the former Minnesota safety, now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a dude that I loved coming out of college and was begging the Dallas Cowboys to draft. I can't remember how many articles I wrote on Antoine Winfield to the Dallas Cowboys when I was writing for the Dallas Cowboys. But Billy Bowman just reminds me a lot of him. Again, super athlete, guy that can play the ball in the air, and he's going to have a good testing day as well, just because he's that good of an athlete.
Yeah, I'm so glad that Winfield was with my Buccaneers. It was definitely probably one of the best pickups that we got. And when he was playing, the defense was on fire. And I agree. I think that that is a good comp for Billy Bowman. But Danny also was speaking about the linebackers that someone asked him, who does he think's going to step up and be the next one in there. The two names he said, of course, made the most sense, but the third one that they added in kind of surprised me. He said Kip and Kobie are the two, but Samuel Masigo as well. Younger, but you got the talent, which I'm like, interesting. It sounds like he really is making waves. That's got me really excited because that's three linebackers now. I feel like I have no concerns going into next season.
Yeah, if that's your linebacker trio there in the middle, mixing a little Kendall Daniels, mixing some other guys, I feel really good about it. I mean, Samuel Omasigo, when he got opportunities this last season, I thought he performed well. I mean, he got kind of thrown into the cheetah role when Kendall Dolby got hurt and Deshaun McCullough was hurt. He was expected to play a lot more than what he was maybe anticipating, at this point in his career. But I thought he played well. He did not look like a liability out there. And when you're a young player, that's kind of the first step, is just not looking like a liability. And then you can continue to get more and more snaps. And when he got snaps, he played well. And so I have no concerns about linebacker moving forward. I would like them to maybe double dip or triple dip in this recruiting class in 2026 to add several impactful linebackers, because it's starting to get a little bit thin as you work down the road. Because, I mean, Kip Lewis, gone after this year. Kobie McKinzie, gone potentially after this year. I can't remember if he redshirted in 2022. I think he might. I think he did.
I think he did redshirt.
So he'll have another year. But if he goes and he just breaks out and has a potential All-American type season, he could be gone after this year. So and even if he's not, if he's still here for 2026, you're going to have plans for this. The guys coming after him, and you got to figure that out. So any other thoughts on the combine, on what's happening here in Indianapolis?
No, if there's one thing that got me excited was seeing that with Danny's 4.52, he was tied with Jahad Campbell, in which I think Jahad Campbell's a fantastic linebacker.
A lot of people
from Alabama
in the first round.
Yeah, and if that's the case, man, there's a good chance that Danny may join him in that first round. He may be a late first round or early second round pick, and that does nothing but look great and reflect great on Brent Venables and what he's been doing here.
Yeah, because Danny Stutsman is easily going to be a football coach's football player.
Yes.
And again, I keep going back to Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. I just feel like that's a match made in football heaven. I know a lot of Sooner fans don't want him to go to Detroit because it's been a garbage franchise for so long, but Dan Campbell's turning things around there, and he's kind of resurrecting it and creating a whole different identity for that team. I don't know. Baltimore would be another great place, just because I would love to see Danny in black helmet with the all black and even the purple pants, but give me the black visor on Danny, looking like something out of The Replacements. It just would be fire.
Or Tampa Bay. I would love for him to be down there with Baker. That would warm my heart. Send him back home.
I love him in Dallas. Please give me him in Dallas. I know a lot of
we can't do Dallas.
Oklahoma fans do not want to see him go to Dallas. I get that.
No, I get it. We want CeeDee Lamb out of there too.
No, stop. Can I tell you? And maybe this is a story for draft night, but we'll save it for around the draft, and I'll tell you my CeeDee Lamb story because, I was like a kid in the candy store the night he got drafted. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube. You can follow me at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Boomer
Sooner. Oh, I can't wait for this draft night story. That's going to be good.
Yeah. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend.